Okay, folks. Now this is going to be fun. So I have a question for everyone. Serious question. This is something that, well, I'll just come out with it. What if dragons were real? Now I know what you're thinking. What the freak are you talking about, Woodward? I'm talking about dragons. You know, those large dinosaur-like monsters that fly in the air and breathe fire? Those things. What if they were real? Most people today have an understanding that this is nothing more than a mythical creature. But I understand that some of you believe it is real. And honestly, I don't think that it's unreasonable considering that there are many people who believe in aliens, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster. People believe in giants. Speaking of which, oh yeah, I'm gonna go there. You see, we have documented history. Some of that documentation, I'm talking about ancient writings, paintings, sculptures, are hard to verify without some form of physical evidence. So what happens is, a lot of what is in ancient history, those things become legends, myths, stories. So let me ask you all a question. How old is archaeology or paleontology? Let me ask you a better question. How long has mankind been digging up the ground? You know, to plant crops, collect mineral resources, all the earth that was used to form these megalithic structures, castles, cities. I would say that humans have been digging up the earth for quite a while, right? So let me ask you all another question. Where is the historical documentation of dinosaurs? Am I missing something? I mean, we've found dinosaurs all over the world within a very short period of time. We're talking about thousands of years humans have been here, digging up gold and silver and copper and diamonds and emeralds. They've dug massive tunnels in certain places, underground irrigation systems. Countless numbers of people have been buried all over. And nobody found a dinosaur? I hope you folks are ready for this because I do have something to show you. Forget about the dragons you've seen in movies. That's nothing compared to what I'm about to present. You thought giant ancient trees was wild? Check this out. So before we begin, I want to make sure that everyone has a very good and clear understanding of something because even when I explain this to you, you're going to see things that are quite prodigious and fantastic. So let's take a look at fossilization. First, what is a fossil by definition? A fossil is the preserved remains or traces of remains of an ancient organism, but it is not the actual biological remains of the organism. It is a rock. Now this rock or fossil can preserve the entire organism or just part of it, such as bones or bone fragments, teeth, skulls, leaves, feathers, shells, etc. A fossil can be a microfossil, which you need a microscope to see. This includes things like bacteria and pollen. A fossil can also be a macrofossil, which could weigh tons like petrified trees or very large bones. Some of the oldest fossils are of algae, and some of the most recent are that of woolly mammoths. So it is understood that fossils are generally around 10,000 years old or older, in theory. For fossilization to occur, which is very rare, an organism has to be buried in sand, mud, lava, tar. It has to be buried in sediment right after it dies or while it is still alive. And you also need a lot of pressure. And this is good for fossilizing hard-bodied organisms. Softer organisms like insects or worms are better fossilized in amber or tree resin. Once the organism is captured in the sediment begins to replace the dissolving minerals of the organism with new minerals, and therefore the organism becomes fossilized. Also, an organism could die first, decay, leaving behind only the hard parts like bones and teeth. And at this point, the bones can be moved or broken. And after they are finally buried, you end up with an incomplete fossil, which is why it's not common to find a complete skeleton fossil. Also, sometimes the dissolving minerals of a buried organism don't get replaced. So instead, you end up with an impression or mold. That mold can then fill up with fresh sediment, creating a cast of the organism. Now keep this in mind, folks. There are actually many possible processes for fossilizing organisms. We should also consider the idea of organisms being flash frozen and almost instantly fossilized. So what you have are what's called body fossils, such as dinosaur bones and teeth, and you also have trace fossils of things like footprints. They are more like impressions of things like leaves and feathers, seashells. Okay, so at this point, we should have warmed up in our minds the basic process of fossilization, how a living organism can be turned into a rock. Now let's talk about dragons for a moment. Not to worry, friends, I will not bore you with the history of dragons and serpents. We should all be aware by now that dragons and serpents are a huge part of our ancient history. And this is a creature that is represented in ancient cultures all over the world. Dozens and dozens of stories. Even today, the dragon is still widely represented in many cultures. So, let's try to use our imaginations here. If you were to research the largest snake in the world, not the longest, but the largest snake, I believe the record is 28 feet with a 44-inch girth. However, there have been reports around the world of other snakes being a bit larger. So let's say we have 30-foot snakes out there. In the ancient world where there were less humans and more jungle, when animals had more freedom to be wild, we can only imagine how large a snake back then could have grown. I do not doubt that dinosaurs existed. I believe they did. I just have a problem with the timeline. And they may not have been what we think they were. Something like the Titanosaurus, researchers say, was likely to be around 70 tons, stretching about 120 feet in length, which is considerably large. Now, how many of you out there are convinced that when it comes to these creatures, this is as big as it gets? What if the fossils we find of these dinosaur creatures are what the ancients were talking about? I'll take it a step further. What if these creatures at one time were so massive that they could literally block out the sun? Well, that would take something the size of a mountain or greater, right? That is exactly what we are going to get into right now. So this is Google Earth, and I want you to just take a look at the area of West Africa. I'm just going to outline it for you. Now, what does that look like? Now, before I say anything else, I'm not going to be the one to explain it to you. Instead, I want you to go to the description box. This is going to be a bit of an interactive episode, folks. I want you to go to the description box below, and there is a video by Mud Fossil University there. Watch that video, and then peruse the channel, and then come back. Do that now, because you may not know what in the world I'm talking about later. Go ahead, I'll wait. Okay, so did you have fun? Roger seems like a fun guy, and I'm looking forward to reading all your comments about this. Now, do I agree that what we are seeing here are the remains of a gigantic dragon and fish? I believe that it is possible, and we can't say that there is no evidence to support this when it is all around us. It could be just a matter of perspective. We can't say that ancient civilizations never told us about these things. And see, the big problem I have with all this is that most people think that something like dinosaurs did not exist alongside humans. I truly believe that mainstream science has put this millions of years gap between us and these creatures, and I think that is a lie. I'm telling you, these ancient civilizations talk about monsters as if it was part of daily life. Yet we only want to believe parts of their stories. You see, folks, they have already dug up things that you wouldn't believe. Human skeletons over 120 feet. Get ready, because you are going to see these things, and they are real. The DNA, see, if you look at the ancient biblical writings, those fallen angels, some of them were larger than life, and some of them had wings, some did not. And if you take the DNA of an angel that is already a giant and mix it with a human, you get a giant human. It's that simple. If you take the DNA of a giant angel and mix it with an animal, you get a giant animal. Remember, they defiled men and almost all living creatures. That's why all of it had to be destroyed. And we sit here believing that these existed over 65 million years ago. Get the freak out of here. By the way, do you know where that number comes from? It was a hypothesis based on a meteor that may have hit Earth 65 million years ago. It's called the Alvarez hypothesis, which since has been updated to 66 million years. Who gives a crap? They can't give us an exact number because they simply do not know. And I've said this before, radiation affects carbon dating. It affects the rate of decay. And that's why so many people don't respect the science of dinosaurs, because they just make stuff up. Paleontology, folks, is a dying science, and I don't know if you knew that. They struggle for funds. People have lost interest because they never say anything new. They can't even find a full skeleton of these things because people had to chop those monsters up so they wouldn't come back. There are stories of this. People always wait for some scientist to confirm if something is real or not. Do you know we have idiots out there who are agnostic, just waiting for some scientist to confirm the existence of God? And it is hilarious and sad. Now, if you took some time to go through Mud Fossil University's channel, you would have come across some things that are mind-blowing. I mean, things that are just unbelievable. And the idea here is that the Earth, particularly the crust, is nothing more than the compost of ancient creatures. The mountains, the hills, the valleys, all once living organisms. Because what happens when a creature dies? It turns into dust. The elemental composition of living creatures and the earth, all the minerals you find in the earth are in your body. You ask a scientist where rocks come from, they don't have an answer. They will give you a bunch of circular logic telling you that rocks came from rocks that came from molten rocks. And it's done this way to stop people in their tracks so they don't ask any more questions about it. Folks, the time has come where certain things are going to be revealed to you. That's why you are seeing channels like Mud Fossil University pop up. And there are others out there who are talking about the same thing. You see, the one thing that the flat earth theory is doing, it is showing you that people are starting to lose faith in mainstream science. They are just not buying it anymore. And these evolving and growing ideas of giants, giant trees, dragons, you're going to find out very soon that some of these things are definitely real. And it's not going to be something you have to go and do research to confirm. It will be in your face, and no one at that point will be able to tell you that it's just a myth or legend. The truth is coming, folks, and it is much stranger than fiction. Keep your eyes open and gather as much information as you all can about giants, dinosaurs, the ancient writings, and come to your own conclusions. The truth will always be the truth, even if no one believes it. And a lie will always be a lie, even if everyone believes it. And it is better to live with an uncomfortable truth than with a comfortable lie.
Look at what it does down here. This is what came out of his mouth. Alright? You ever see anything like that? That is nasty. Now, this is Atlantis, according to Herodotus and Solon and Plato and history. To the pyramids, which were built on plateaus. The Giza Plateau. They look like they're tree trunks. They're not. As we all know, the original peoples of everywhere on Earth have been treated like they were silly. And I have come to realize that is silly. Those are the people that are in touch with reality. And Mud Fossils has turned this whole thing on its head because it's true, the things that they are saying are supported by the evidence that exists on the ground. So let's dig into the evidence and then we'll dig into the sayings and what they told them. And these are what they call the dream times, the times that created the earth.